Anybody outside, get them in. I grew up before my house. We had to yell. They didn't have them. Okay, ready? Okay. Now we were asked to have a actual panel discussion, and I've always shied away from panels. I really don't like them because what they've done today with the universities and the scientists and the questions and answers, I sort of go, no. But I got to thinking about it more and more with the panel and said, well, if we're going to do it, and I've always winged putting conferences together, we used to have panels back in the 60s and 70s, but they weren't like today's formal junk. So I decided to do it old style, okay? So, for speaking, is Joe Vietti here? Joe, you're up.
I'm a scientist, but I don't work at a university.
Thank you.
Okay. Gary Chase.
Yeah.
Okay, you're up.
Now?
Yes. You can find a seat here wherever you want.
Oh my God.
Well, you look like a natural good scientist. All right. Dimitri. Okay, James Jarvis. You're doing great. You're doing great. Vonella Regal out of Florida. And you got it right. Did I get it right? Yeah. You're going to be up here because you're going to come from Florida and want to know what's going on down there in politics. And then Anise Goodwin? Anise Goodwin? Okay. You look like a good talker. And then there's Mark Beekeepers. Am I saying it right?
No.
No? How do you pronounce it?
It's boogeyman that's standing.
I better write that down because that's really different. Write it down.
There we go. Talk about being. It's like everybody in here can be up there.
Okay. Now this is going to be our formal panel.
Should we introduce?
Yes, now you're going to have to introduce yourself. If it takes about 5 minutes, who you are, what state you're from, what do you do, how many bees, sort of. So we've got a background on you. And then we're going to do general discussion on beekeeping, putting all the pieces together. So if I've got different states here, different parts of the country, and you're having problems in your area or what the politics are, this is how we used to put it together the old way for staying on top of things and interexchanging information for learning. And then we add to from the audience with questions and answers. And that's normally how we used to start the old meetings for getting fun and games going the old way instead of the old formal.
Will you need the microphone just to be passed, or do you think that?
Well, if they keep quiet, if we have to shut, that should be okay. But this was before the times of the speakers and things. Not that I'm that old. But when you talk, don't the old whisper stuff. Talk and raise your voice, sorta. You know, learn how to do that like you're in school shouting at the girls. You know what it is. And we'll see where it goes. So, Joe, you start off and we'll come down to the introduction, 5-minute introduction with everyone, and then we'll start off.
5 minutes each. That's a long time.
Well, just.
We'll just see how it goes.
Okay.
All right, my name's Joe Vietti. I live in Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, which is near Madison, Wisconsin. I've been keeping bees for, well, I can't say I was keeping them for very many years, but I've been keeping small cell bees for the last 2 years. I went through regression 2 years ago. Picked up a roller mill. I make my own foundations, so some of the stuff that Dee has in the back I learned from her, and picked up a machine and do that myself now too. I get most of my bees from cutouts and swarm calls. I've got my name on about 5 lists locally. Don't pay a lot of attention to my local beekeeping group because they're a bunch of dopers, feeders. But what I do see within that group is a lot of local interest in new beekeeping. And so I'm trying to reach out to some of those people on the side. Quite often they'll post a question or post a request for somebody to come look at their hive with them. And after 5 days or so, I'll write them separately and say, hey, did anybody contact you to come out and take a look at your hive and help you out? And most of the time they'll say, no, nobody responded. So kind of on the sly, I've been using the club to reach out to new beekeepers. To go out and look at your hive with them, talk with them about what they're doing, what they want to do. Really, with the new beekeepers, there are a lot of people who want to be clean. I think that's just the mentality of a lot of the people, even the older people just getting into it. They want to do it to help bees. And this commercial mindset of having to treat them and having to feed them just doesn't work well for them. So I think there's an eager opportunity for people to get that information out there without having to get yourself in trouble with the politics, so to speak. That's what I do. I'm from Wisconsin. We just got our snow melt recently.
Can I ask people, sorry to interrupt, can I ask people to say why you are in this, how you got to this group instead of,
This is open discussion.
but I would like to hear all these people.
Okay, I found this group through a small cell website. I searched small cell bees because I picked up a feral swarm that surprised me at the size of the comb that it drew out naturally. And just from observations, and having had bees on foundation, that I bought a kit, right? And then having these bees that I put on foundation frames, and I measured them, and they were between 4.9 and 5 millimeters, and the bees that I had from the kit were 5.4, and it just started a whole thought process. How can these bees live in a tree, swarm out of that tree so they're healthy? I've caught them. Most beekeepers talk about catching a swarm, putting it on foundation, and losing it within 2 years or having to treat it to keep alive. It just didn't make sense to me. So, did my searches, I found this group. I've been to this meeting 3 years now. I've been down to D's and seen it work in action and regressed my bees, and I'm seeing it work with my bees as well. So,
See, this is what people need to hear. So going through this and then putting all the pieces, this is the way panels used to be. Get people talking, get them going, inter-exchanging. You don't want it anymore. You want to get up there, point, and do things. Okay. Okay. Gary Chase is next.
I'm Gary Chase. I'm from LA, where everybody wants to be groovy, and now beekeeping is, oh, I want to keep bees, I want to have my own hive, and you have people can't even talk to their neighbor without getting into an argument. So I was telling you, you gotta be able to talk to your neighbor before you wanna keep bees in your backyard 10 feet away from the back door, you know? So, I try to encourage a common sense way of getting along because there's always problems in the city with bees. And they're always stinging somebody and you get a bad rap and it all goes down the dumper. Originally, I got on Bee Path as a part of my spiritual path. I had to go on Facebook to find out that somebody was having a honey harvest 4 doors down the block from me. And so I went down, they didn't even know how to light a smoker, God bless them. But I learned how to love the bees, and I thought, you know, I'm going to get into this group, Backwards Beekeepers, which was Kirk Anderson in LA.
Where is he now? Where is he now?
He's in LA.
But he's not doing anything.
He's doing it. He's doing a lot of photography these days too. He's slowing down, you know, he's getting a little older. But anyway, so back then we had a swarm rescue hotline where anybody could call a number and, you know, I'd be on my way home from the studio and, oh, there's a street, go get that swarm. Well, somebody got stung and then that got shut down. So, the whole communication and being, you know, really smart about it is really important in the urban environment. I don't know how many of y'all have to deal with, but it's so important. So I always recommend the book Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg because it really has more to do with beekeeping than you think. You know, bees are great communicators, and we have to be as well. And so, in addition to the spiritual path of, you know, like incorporating bees, like just I'm a very high-strung person. Bees made me slow down. Bees made me chill out and go into a meditative space when I work with them, because you can't be uptight and frantic with working with bees. So every time I went around the hive, I just started just watching and just noticing what they're doing, you know, give them a little smoke. It became a fun way to get out of the studio. It was a beautiful, relaxing experience. Going from there, everything that I do in my life has to do with the path of health. That's just how I approach things, you know, after really packing it in on stage. So I realized with bees, there's so much healing in the bee hive. You know, you hear about these things, and I'm not talking about products. You know, I mean, I got nothing against them, you know, God bless anybody who's selling good bee products, but last night I had the most incredible, it was like a hallucinogenic experience. I'm rooming with Don Downs. He put me in the same room. Any of you ever roomed with Don Downs? Okay. This was so incredible. So I go in there, Don's gotten back from church, and he goes, I haven't any time to do this, and I'm going to do this. And I go, what are you doing? And he lies down in his bed, and he gets this bottle of honey with the bear, you know, and the nozzle, and he goes, okay, now you just put it in your nose and push back, and you just do it until you feel a little coolness in your nostril. I go, this guy is crazy. And so, but I couldn't resist because I was just getting over this cold. And of course, if I'm hanging out with Don Downs, I have to do this. You know? If you sting in, I gotta sting. Because without experiencing this, you don't know what the potential is. You just go, yeah, he's a wacky guy, but he knows his stuff. You know, you've got to experience this stuff once. It's not going to kill you, folks. You know, you take the thing of honey. You lie down on a bed, you squeeze it ever so slightly. As soon as you feel this coolness, you stop. You do it the other nostril. And then you lie there for 10 minutes. And all this stuff starts coming down, all the, you know, the protein is a bit, and you spit it out into a nap, bring a box of Kleenex in there. It sounds gross, but trust me on it. It's phenomenal.
Cleans out your anxiety.
You just don't do too much. Don't do too much. Small, you know, if some is good, more isn't better.
That's the old way for holes and get the flu under control, and then a drop a day in your eyes.
Yeah,
is
I'm
what
gonna
they
try that
use.
tonight.
That eliminates cataracts, eyeglasses for making your eyes better, and you can go from 200-300 power down to 120 with with one drop of honey in each eye. It might sting for 15 to 20 seconds, but then after a couple of months, the cataracts are going, you don't need the surgery, and they don't, and I've got the books at my house on how to do all that.
See, and that's the kind of stuff, that's why I'm here, is because, I was told that Gillespie is this radical who like talks about all this stuff, and I said, she's my kind of girl. And so anyway, let me finish this, because it's really important. So you're lying on your back, this is happening for between 10 and 15 minutes, and you just have to make sure you spit all that stuff up. You don't want to swallow any of that, okay? And then, at the end of 10 minutes, you just get up, and everything just comes out. It burns a little bit, I'm not going to say painfully, stings a little bit, okay? After you get done, you go, oh my God, I can breathe, and you sleep so much better because you're not all clogged up. It's just phenomenal. So anyway, that's enough of that, but I just want to encourage you all to try that,
Oh, you can also put the honey drops in each earlobe laying sideways to redo your hearing too, and let it come out, and some of the nostrils in your
Yeah,
mouth
there's a
too.
lot of good
But
stuff.
that's it's a whole connected system between your earlobe, your nose, your eyes. And like the dry eye, where you get too much salt and all this, because you've got cataracts and stuff. The drop of honey, your earlobe to here, you never have all those colds and
Well, we're going to come back. I
Yeah.
think I've exceeded my 5 minutes.
That's okay, now it's Dimitri.
I'm Beatrice Hess, and
Where are you from?
from Kingsburg, California. It's
Okay.
about 3 hours away from Sacramento. And then I caught my firstborn. Well, it became my hive like a week ago, and it was on the blue at a cemetery. And the bees were weighing the blue down, so we had to cut the blue off, and then we shook the bees into a hive, and then just let it stay there until dark. Came back with flashlights, found the hive, and took it back to our yard. And how I got interested in bees was my grandfather. He kept bees in Russia, and then my dad went for them, and I went for my dad. So, and
How old are you?
I am 12.
Awesome. I love you.
That's it.
There you go.
Excellent.
Okay, next person is James Jarvis.
Yes, James Jarvis. I live here in Tucson, Arizona.
Okay, speak a little bit louder.
I live here in Tucson, Arizona, and beekeeping was always something that I felt would be really cool to do. And I've told some of you this story already. But, whenever I would go to farmers markets, I'd always gravitate to the table that had the honey on it and think to myself, God, that's cool doing that. But, your life is happening, so you just keep going. And one such Saturday morning here at a farmer's market in Tucson, went up to the honey guy. For some reason, out of my mouth came, can I go around with you sometime? To see how you do this. And the guy said, well, I'm not the beekeeper, but if you give me your information, I'll pass it on. So it was probably the end of March, just when things are gearing up around here. So the timing was good. But a couple days later, and I guess it was my destiny, because a couple days later, I got a call from some lady named Dee Lusby. And so she said, if you're stupid enough to come down, come on down. Sure, I'll let you do my work for me. So I went down there, and I didn't know anything about it. And she gave me a half suit, the top part. And I was getting stung like 25 times in my legs because I just had jeans on. So So I think after 3 or 4 days, she started to feel sorry for me and said, you know, you might want to put some long johns on underneath that. You won't get stung so much. So that's what I did. But after after about a week, she got a call from somebody in the area that needed a cutout done. And she asked me if I wanted to do it. And I said, sure. I didn't have a clue what to do. And the poor bees that got massacred.
Yeah.
But luckily, it was a gentleman, retired gentleman, that was very nice. And, you know, I got out of there alive, made a couple bucks. And, you know, 8 years later, that's what I do now. I do a lot of rescue and relocating of bees. And I never bought any bees. I get all my bees by swarms. And I called the water company and told them I'd remove bees for free. And so that's how I got started. And
How many you got now?
about 30, 25, 30.
Really?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I haven't been a very good steward the last 8 years because I had been, up to this point, I leave town for a couple months in the summer, go up to Alaska. So, you know, they're like any other livestock, you have to take care of them. So, you know, I had a lot of hives that got wiped out by wax moths. And, but now I'm into a whole new thing. We've got a failed city in South Tucson. It's all Hispanic. And we've got a pretty neat grassroots movement going there. And I'm going to show the kids how to do all this stuff. So I'm really pumped up about it. And,
You're not teaching.
yeah, well, that's what I am. I'm a teacher. So finally, I get to do what I'm, good at. And I really enjoy being around children because I'm kind of still on that level. Yeah. So it's really a blast. The best thing about beekeeping is you never have to freaking Christmas shop again. Everybody gets honey.
That's right.
Everybody comes to the house. And everybody likes it. But our time is good. There's definitely a consciousness on the planet. We know what's going on, and of course, I'm sure everybody in here is a trailblazer, or you wouldn't be here. And we're all in this together, as you know. So, if I can ever help anybody,
Okay, next.
Hi, I'm Vonella Regal. I'm from Florida. And when I say Florida, don't think beach. That is where we are. We're in North Florida in a rural area that's, I used to think that we were in a fairly safe area as far as beekeeping is concerned. But whoever put the lovely map where you can draw the circles around where you are, I got to see my location. I knew we were having problems with genetically altered pine trees. What I didn't realize is that my area is cut up by pine trees, then open fields for horses or cattle. Occasionally we get, my saving grace is swamp. This past fall, I've demoted myself from beekeeper to bee buyer out of sheer frustration. We had purchased originally 2 packages through a local bee club. And I was already miffed about that because I got them at the end of May. And if you know anything about North Florida, at the end of May is the end of the season and you go into a dearth. So I start out these packages, I'm trying to reduce them, I'm having to feed them real honey, real pollen, by the way. And so, of course, eventually I lose them. We rounded up again. My husband was very generous. He had faith in me, and he says, okay, 3 packages to do the same club. We got them a little bit earlier, but still, I finally had sense to ask where these packages were coming from. The mountains of Georgia. So, yeah, I see some of you shaking your head. If you don't know what that means they're totally not local. They're from a different altitude. the bees have no clue what to look for to eat in my area. Okay, so we went through that. In the meantime, we're playing at catching swarms and having a good time, and I've got a really funny story. If you want to ask about it later, I'll tell you. But my husband gets the brunt of that, so it's really funny. He's a good sport, by the way. He's a really good sport. Why I got into beekeeping? Well, you know, if I worked for a living for a long time, and then I got to the point where we were not happy how our children were being educated. My husband was a public school teacher. So we were in four different places, our family. Two children in two different places. My husband, I was in a different city sometimes. So after that, we rounded all that up, and I stopped working. He had me homeschooling kids. You know, that takes a lot of energy. So when I was finished doing that, I had to find something to do with myself. And I'm obviously not the one that goes to the spa and stays there. So I was always interested in beekeeping. And so for about 2 years I read, and I've followed Dee's list for, was it 5 years now? Something like that. So I've read just about everything that's come out. So it's all up here, but putting it into practice has been interesting. Right now I have two baby hives again. I bought from a local guy who is not treating other than putting in small hive beetle traps, which we have removed, and put the hives on honey supercell. My last inspection, I removed that. They hated it, and I put in some old small cell combs that I had. And when we get back home, we're going to go in again and see if they like that. Keep your fingers crossed for me, because I really want to be promoted back to beekeeping.
Where at in Florida?
A little place called Palaca. Actually, we live outside.
Nowhere like that. I was raised in Perry, south of Tallahassee.
Okay, so you know what I'm facing.
Yeah, well, I know the pine trees. I did do Beekeeping, but people don't know what 100 miles of pine trees look like. If you go to North Florida for 100 miles, you can drive nothing but pine trees. They cut and drained all the swamp and planted pine trees in there. When I was a kid, that was all water. It was natural. It's all been drained, and it's, like I say, hundreds of miles of nothing but pine trees in any direction you go in North Florida.
And now they're having serious problems because of it, right?
Right,
Yeah.
well, there's no gallberry, there's no understory. What my biggest fear is they'll decide to do like Georgia and spray the pines, let the needles fall, so they can collect those up and sell those to urban people who think, oh look, I've got pretty pine needles in my bed, and it's got a defoliant in the needles, okay? And then they cut down the pine trees and make our paper towels and toilet paper out of it. So.
Now you got the poison in your toilet paper.
Right. Just, I want you to. Thanks a lot.
I thought that'd be something to think about for me.
We used to have, they told me.
Right, that's exactly where I was
Commercial
going.
men would bring in their bees and dump them in our neighborhood.
That's many bees and all the stuff, the games they played from Wisconsin and down back and forth.
Right, well, they don't come anymore.
Well, that's good. What'd you do? You get rid of them?
I didn't do anything. Apparently, a lot of the gallberry is gone. The only saving grace is the swamps. They can't always go in those waterways and clear cut, and they haven't drained everything where we are, because it's there's a lot of old families still there, and it's inherited property. So I'm surrounded by these several families that hold on to their land as much as they can. So I've got that saving grace, but they like horses and cows. So if it's not planted pine for, the grandchildren, or now it's down to 15 years, is that what we were told? These trees grow in 15 years.
Very well,
Oh, of course it's not, and there is plenty of pollen, but what we were told is the pollen is so degraded, what, 15% protein? Where, you know, I'm not sure what normal protein, normal pollen is supposed to be. Yeah, 80 or 90? Okay, so that's what we're facing. They don't, unless they're starved, they will not go and collect that pollen. We saw pollen falling on, next to the beehives, and it's just these little catkins or whatever they're called, flat, and you have a spray of yellow pollen like that. They were not interested, okay? But fortunately, there's things out there blooming right now that they can go collect.
Procter & Gamble is to Florida what Monsanto is to the United States. Procter & Gamble controls Florida, the pine industry in Florida, and probably half of Florida is pine trees. And there's nothing that grows in under.
Right,
That's not native or natural down here.
no,
The native pine trees take like 50 years to grow. They can grow these salt trees out in 6 to 12 years.
Hello, I'm Anise Goodwin. I now live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I've been there for a year and a half. So the last year and a half, even though it's this year is my 8th year of beekeeping, I am new to the high desert and I'm learning all over again. I lived in North Carolina for close to 30 years prior to that. How did I get into beekeeping? I was raised on my grandfather's farm at least the first 5 years in the Willamette Valley in Oregon. And once I was probably about 3, I pretty much had the run of the apple orchards, the barn. I can remember going out in the fields with my dad to bring in the cows. And it was, I guess I was a pretty wild child, unsocialized. And we moved to the city in, there was a beehive, the old stand-up, big rectangular, very deep, next to the orchard. And
City in Florida.
part, close to Salem.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. And my grandfather leased 400 acres and did cattle and apples. So I wanted to see the bees, and the only time I was shown the bees was sometime in October, November. It was already starting to get cold, a lot of breath, a little bit of frost. And at that time, my grandfather opened the hive, and there was just this vibration. And I was fascinated. I wanted to touch them. I wasn't allowed, of course. And when we moved to the city, the only time I saw bees were in the parks and on the clover and getting bee stings. But there was that constant hum in the background. And I noticed in North Carolina, somewhere in the 80s to early 90s, I walked through the botanical gardens at Duke University, and there wasn't a buzz of any kind at that time. And it was like, what has happened? And so I started doing some reading, but it was really another decade before I got into beekeeping. A coworker kept hives, a bear tore them up. She put all the honey in the freezer. And so one January,